So, I got to get back on the wagon, dude. We've all been traveling, and I think you and Josh been on the road for like 3 weeks straight. And you know how the eating is when you're on the road. It's very tough. We probably have a little bit more booze than we're supposed to have, and we hang out. And it's Christmas time, right? So you're going to a lot of Christmas parties and gatherings or whatever. And I was getting ready to get in the shower the other day, and my wife was like, "When'd you buy a thong?" And it wasn't a thong; it was my underwear. So that is my indicator that I probably need to get back on a schedule here and start getting back in shape.
Yeah, I'm on the same negative feedback loop, and that's not good for me because it's like the worst shape you get in. You're like, well, I go to the gym and I'll have to start all over, and so on. So you're like, I won't go to the gym tonight. I'll just eat. How much worse could it get? And I'm doing that damn ultra thing in over just over a week. And the good news though with that ultra is it's good. Well, the bad news is it's going to hurt regardless. But I weigh probably 20 pounds less than I did last year because
It's good.
I haven't been working out. So I've lost mainly muscle. Now, bad news is I put on fat, but I don't know. Maybe it'll be easier on my feet. Because I did not train for it last year. Nothing. I just kept going to the gym, you know, and I was pretty heavy. But yeah, traveling does it. You just got to bite the bullet and realize, you know what? I just got to go do something. And it's probably in the morning is the time to do it because I'm wiped out at the end of the
Oh
day.
yeah.
I'm just wiped out. So I guess the trick is to do it in the morning, and then you guys though because I was on the road with Josh and some of the other guys that listen, and they actually are a lot more disciplined when they're on the road about eating than I am. Because I'm like, oh, I'm on the road. I just go to restaurants, get whatever I want.
TDY, baby.
But they'll get a salad or something, like a nice salad, like a big Cobb salad or something. That's
Whatever, dude.
better
They're all
than
still fat, so whatever.
yeah,
They ain't
that's
doing
true.
anything. It ain't doing any good for them.
Uh,
This ultra thing, which you're underselling this thing because one, like for Josh and one of our other Jeremy or other listeners, I don't want to dime them out so much, but it's like it's their first time, right? So they've got this mental image, and they've both suffered through their military careers, and they've heard you tell your stories, but you don't know till you're out there, right? Like it's like mile whatever, and you can correct, but you get to like mile 50 or 60, like, hey, it's real at this point. It is real. And so this ultra, I was talking to Josh, it's become the Army PT test. Oh man, I'm good. I got 6 months to train for this thing. Right. And so then it's like
uh,
Friday, and you're like, it's Friday, man. I'm just gonna go ahead and drink beer and eat some taco, but I'll start Monday. Right. And the next thing you know, that week turns into like a month. And you're like, dude, I still got 5 months left. So we're good, man. I'm gonna start Monday or whatever. And then traveling comes up. I'll do it right after vacation. Well, the next thing you know, you're within like 2 weeks. Josh was like, dude, I got to do this thing in like 2 weeks. And at this point, there's no use to like train up for it, right? Hey man, you're committed, and you're just going to go out there and you're going to go Mongo smash this thing with brute force and ignorance and nug your way through it.
yeah, I mean, ugh, that's I just don't know if there was anything I could do to make it easier on myself. I really don't. Even 6 months ago,
Well,
um,
toughen
you
your
know,
feet. I mean, I imagine that'd be
yeah,
huge, right?
yeah, and I'll tell you, one of us has done a good job of that. It's not me or Josh. Put it to you that way. And Josh sent a picture of the shoes that he got, I guess, in the mail today. I don't know if he got two sets of ultras or a set of Hokas, a set of ultras, but it's like, you better break those in at least a little bit,
I
you
was going to
know.
say, so he's just like, screw it, man. I'm going out with new shoes and we're going to rock this thing.
I, I don't know. It's the worst part is you're going to be with I was with Darren last time, and Darren, we're holding each other accountable and everything, but this time, going to be with three other guys. They're holding each other accountable, so there's no quitting. There's no quitting. And last year, I almost thought I was going to have to quit because I laid down to rest, and when I woke up, it felt like I was getting the flu. That feeling where
Oh
everything's
yeah.
achy and you kind of get that scratch to the back of your throat and your eyes feel a little, I don't know. But I was like, if I get in the flu and I've got 40 miles to go, I don't know if this is gonna work out or not. But I just walked it off, and The interesting thing, Roger, is I was looking at my split times from last year, and I was telling you guys, the mistakes I made is I took too many long rest breaks. And a
Mhm.
long rest break would be anything over 20 minutes, right? And when I would take those long rest breaks, I would get up, especially the last 40 miles, and I swear I was walking so slow because it hurt so bad on my feet and my legs that it would take 2 or 3 laps to get to where, okay, it doesn't hurt as bad now. I'm in a rhythm. Well, looking at the splits, those first 2 or 3 laps weren't really any slower than the others. It was just way more painful. So I've just got to keep that in mind this time. It's like, hey, man, it may feel like you're going slow. Don't worry about it. It's just, dude, I don't, we're so stupid for doing this. I mean, we could do the Baton Death March in White Sands. And that would be hard, and it'd be over in a few hours. This is ridiculous. I don't know why we're doing it. It's just dumb. And those
Well, I don't
guys
know
are
why you're
excited about it.
I don't know why you're doing it again. It's one
I
thing to
was
do it
peer
one time.
pressured into it. I'm a sucker for peer pressure. Dang. But yeah, we'll send you some videos and stuff. Maybe you could put that out somewhere, or we could do like the Twitter live feed or something. I don't know, but it'll be. Oh yeah, those guys too. The first 25 miles, you'll be like, "Oh, this is great. I don't see what the big deal is." It's gonna be awesome. And I'll
I
tell you
think
though. Go ahead.
I think the farthest I've walked, like I'll accompany my wife on some of her events, and I've had some days like 18-mile days or 17-mile, but that's of course over a day, and it's at your I don't want to say leisurely pace, but like I'm not on a time hack. Like you're obviously you've got a certain amount of time to do all this stuff. I can only imagine, dude, because after that I get to go drink some beer and go sleep for like 12 hours, and then wake up in the morning and go do it again. Whereas like, hey man, it's almost like driving cross country. It's my wife hates driving with me because I hate taking breaks because I know that every minute I'm on a break is 1 mile farther I could be down the road. So with what you guys are doing, it's like, yeah, you could stop and sleep or take a nap or whatever, but every 10 minutes that you do that is another mile that you could be closer to finishing this thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's I don't know. What does Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. You've got a plan until you get a few hot spots on your feet. And it's like you get super
yeah,
tired and all this stuff. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I don't know.
I do think though with more people though, it will be different, right? It's not like the same because like if it's two of us, like we get to a point like, dude, this sucks. Yeah, this is effing horrible, and you're just looking for ways to tap out. But if you have three or four of you, it's a little different because just the way your cycles are. Some people will be upbeat, some people be down. It's like, hey, you're gonna have people all over the spectrum, right? So hopefully, one of those. I'm sure Josh will be the most upbeat of everybody
uh,
throughout the.
the grouch. He's gonna be grouchy because you know how he gets
uh,
with little sleep, and when he gets hungry, oh man, I don't know. I don't think we'll walk together the whole way. I think that's almost counterproductive to do that. Well, for me, it
Sure.
is. For
But the
me, I
course
got.
is short enough that you'll see each other
Oh yeah.
every several laps or whatever, right?
I mean, my wife tried to call me a few times last year when I was doing it, and I'd answer the phone, because I have my phone with me and everything, my little earbuds and everything. And she goes, "How come you haven't been calling?" It's like, I am late in this race and I have to be in a certain headspace.
Right.
I've got to just put my head down and just go and not really think about anything, kind of zone out. Yeah. So yeah, it'll be funny. And I guarantee Josh will be the grouchiest for sure. For sure. And I could see Jared getting a little grouchy too, honestly, but we'll see. I don't know.
So when
And he's
Josh is
deep.
at his when he's at his grouchiest, we need to do a live feed. Put the phone in his face.
And one guy, he's doing it with his son. So imagine that level of accountability. You can't,
Well, yeah,
you
that
can't
that
wuss
you're
out in
making
front
it.
of your, yeah,
Yeah, you're making it with your boy.
yeah. Oh, dude.
Well, and you guys too, you have to make it because you can't be like the other guy's like, "Hey, Dad, I thought you worked with these two guys." Well, I did. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's on you guys as well.
Well, one thing, and I think one area that all three of us or all four of us are falling behind on, honestly, is the logistics of it. Because as all of us like to say, amateurs think tactics, professionals think logistics, and we're still talking logistics. I think it's almost too late for that. I think we're going to forget something. But the good news is we'll have my old man is going to provide support. So if we do forget something or whatever, he'll be there to clean it up. But so speaking of travel, I want to put this out before I forget. So I've been renting with Hertz for over 20 years, and I've never really had a problem until I returned a car last Saturday to the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. And dude, we've done this 1,000 times. You put the keys on the dash, especially when nobody's there, and you leave the car. You go fill it up and all that stuff. And we're pretty responsible guys. We fill up as close to the airport as possible. Whatever. I left the keys on the dash. The dude is checking in vehicles right around me. I made eye contact with him. I said, "Are we good?" And he's about to stop and ask me if the keys, but he looks on the dash. He goes, "Yep, I see him. We're good." So I walk off, get on the flight. Well, get on the flight, land in Dallas, and there's a message. And it's Hertz saying, "Hey, we're letting you know that, if you have the key, you need to FedEx it to this address. But in the meantime, we've charged you $250 for a replacement key and $50 towing fee." And I'm like, okay. So I spend my layover time in Dallas trying to get in touch with them. Basically, there's still no resolution to it. They're contacting the agency at the airport. That's what they keep telling me. And it's like, man, it's my word against theirs. Who knows what happened? And I learned a valuable lesson. This is what I want to pass on to everybody. From now on, I guess there's just one more step. I've got to take a picture of the keys on the dash when I leave. That's all there is to it. But even then, Roger, if I had the picture, I said, "Hey, here's the timestamp," they still probably wouldn't have it resolved right now.
No, because it's the rental car industry is horrible. I mean, as a whole, and I used to be like, I used to rent with Hertz all the time. Now I only do it if I absolutely have to. Like if I fly into DCA, I rent with Hertz because they're located at the airport. That's a very big deal for me because it shaves 20 minutes off, 30 minutes off, whatever. And it's not as bad as yours, but like one, I do videotape the car. Like I walk around it because remember back in the day they used to have the form. Well, they don't do that anymore. And they don't do that. But if you come back and you have something on there, they're like, "Hey man, this is on you." So now, every car I rent, I walk around it. I do take a picture, or I take, walk around my phone. I do take a picture of like the gas gauge, especially if it's not full, and when I return it on full. Never thought about doing the keys, which apparently I need to start doing now. But it's because I can tell you what happened in your case. You dropped it off. The guy picked up the key, got called by whoever, put it in his pants pocket. Somebody else came to check the car. I was like, "Hey, where are the keys at?" "Well, I don't know." And that's exactly what happened. And then some dude got home that night and was like, "Oh, look at that, man. I found some keys," or whatever. But the overall customer service level, it was funny because I rented with Hertz as well a week prior to you. And, I show up at DCA and through USA, you get the Hertz Gold thing automatically, whatever. So you show up, your name's supposed to be on the big board. You go get your car. We roll out. Everything's great. Show up, name's not on the big board. Like, all right, great. Nobody's at the gold counter right there at the parking lot. So I walk inside to the gold counter, and the lady is literally doing her fingernails. So I'm standing there. I'm the only one in line, right? So I'm standing there, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be a butthole about this. I'll wait 5 or 6 seconds. It was clear I was there. She saw me, so I'm like, I'll wait 5 or 6 seconds because she's picking her cuticles out or wherever the hell it is. And I wait like 10 seconds. She's still picking her nails. I'm like, "Excuse me, are you going to help me?" And she just kind of looked up like indignant, dude. Like, "How dare you? Can't you see I'm busy?" And I'm just like, "Hey, my name's supposed to be on the thing." She's like, "Well, you need to go to the other gold counter." I'm like, "Well, this says gold and nobody's at the other gold counter. So this is why I'm here." "So what do you expect me to do?" "I expect you to get me a car is what you can do." And finally she just kind of looked at me and was like, "You're just gonna have to go to the other gold counter." I was like, "You know what? Whatever. I'm clearly not getting anything done here." Thankfully, go to the other lady, super, super helpful. And she had to go do something or whatever it was. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But broader point is, dude, the rental car, it was bad before COVID. Now with, after COVID, dude, it's horrible. I mean, it's absolutely atrocious. Although I will say I've had pretty good luck. Well, so let me ask you this. Do you think it's dependent on the company or the airport?
Airport.
Absolutely.
airport.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, because Atlanta's awful. We all know that, except for the Centurion Lounge. They remodeled their Centurion Lounge. It is nice, dude. They've got a bourbon tasting room. They've got,
Yeah.
it's nice, man. So other than that, everybody in there is super nice, except for the people that check you in. I don't know what it is with these club lounges, but the people that check you in, they're acting like they're security at a nuclear weapons production site or something. It's like, they're doing you a favor by letting you in. It's like, no, you don't understand. I'm a member of this basically. But
Like, I pay for this, so
other than that, I mean, it was okay. Dallas is getting worse too. You know, don't you hate it? I told you guys about this. That trip back from guess it was in Georgia. Yeah, in Georgia. That trip back was just ridiculous because I had the lost keys, right? Supposed lost keys. And I get to Dallas and my flight back to Lubbock is just altogether canceled. It's a delayed. And I'm like, okay, delayed an hour. That's cool. I can go to the Centurion Club, right? No, it's delayed for 13 hours. And I'm like, well, wait,
that's called rescheduled.
that's tomorrow morning, for maintenance. So I go to the desk, in the terminal, and they're just like, there's nothing we can do. We can give you a food voucher and we can give you a hotel voucher for this hotel. And I'm like, nothing. It's like, you can't even like see if I can get on standby. Nope, those flights are full. The standby slots are full. And I'm like, so there's no recourse here, nothing. It's the way they were acting, how they handle you. They've been trained to handle you. And I'm just like, I look at the food voucher, it's $12. And I'm like,
Yep.
$12 won't even buy some fries in this airport. And I look at the hotel and it's the Atrium DFW. That's the worst hotel there. And I'm like, oh God. Well, I ended up complaining, getting the Josh discount, and they gave me 10,000 points. But still, man, I mean, a 13-hour delay, what's up?
Well, and that is the advantage. We've all been talking. It's funny when we're all together talking about, frequent traveling and benefits or whatever. And they're all, I mean, I guess it just depends on your situation, how much you travel and where you go to. One of the reasons why we chose American Airlines was specifically because if things are delayed, you need to go on standby, whatever, they do give you preferential treatment versus a Centurion Lounge, which nice lounge. Don't get me wrong. You get in there, it's kick ass. And I've been in one with one of our listeners, like, wow, this is pretty nice. But the great thing with, like, we do the Admirals Club with American. So with that there, they have their own booking agents inside the lounge. So you go in there, your stuff's delayed, whatever. That lady is like there to rebook you right then and there. Because they know, I mean, surely they've been briefed that, hey, look, the people in here have an American Airlines credit card, which is where they're going to make a lot of their money, right? And so you're going to give them a different level of service. So it's automatic standbys. And that's one of the reasons, we looked at the money, like when you look, because it's a membership thing, obviously, like most of them are. And when we look at my wife and I traveling, we're like, hey, every time we go to the airport, we buy breakfast to go out, because normally from Phoenix, it's a long flight, just like you, it's a long flight. So you spend at least $20 per person one way. So for both of us, $40. You go there and back. Now you're at 80. You haven't bought drinks or anything, which in most of these lounges, beer and liquor's free or whatever. So I mean, you're on $80, $100, per trip, easy, right? So I'm like, hey, if we do 10 round trips a year, it pays for itself. And like you, I mean, we haven't had a 13-hour layover, but we've I think our last flight we were late over like 4 hours. And I'm kind of like you when you sent that text. I'm about to drink my weight in beer. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, man, that's on you, and so that's the benefit of it. So I dig it.
Yeah, I went with the Amex Platinum because one of our listeners talked me into that over the American Airlines, because it gives you automatic insurance on your rental car. So they'll just charge, if you get in a fender bender or something, and you don't have that
Sure.
coverage, and the other person doesn't have coverage, you're trying to work it out, they're going to charge your card, and then it's automatically reimbursed. So I'm like, well, that right there, because when we rent these cars on these trips, it's not reimbursed. The insurance isn't reimbursed. In some places, $40 a day. That takes a bite into your
Right.
per diem, obviously. And so I always get nervous, because I've been screwed on that before. I always get
But
nervous.
you're
I'm like,
with
man, if
USAA
something
now,
happens.
right?
Yeah, for now.
Okay.
But
Because
I'm
I
on.
know Geico.
Geico covers
Geico
it?
does the rental coverage. So Geico will cover you and the spouse. It won't cover any of your kids for rentals, but we had that conversation back and forth because back in the day, I had USA and they used to cover it. Actually, you know what it's called? It's called Riders Insurance. I remember this now. It's called Riders Insurance, and it used to be like $3 a month that you had to pay for it. And then when we left USA because the rates got outrageous, we went to Geico. And after our conversation, I was like, "Hey, let me check just to make sure." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm covered. Spouse is covered. Kids aren't covered. They got to get their own."
See, I think that'll be a project for January 2025 is getting off of USAA car insurance and on Geico or something else because it's
Oh, dude, they're
outrageous.
horrible.
And no, they don't cover rental. You have to pay way extra, and it's way more than $3. It's a whole package you got to buy. You can't just pick and choose. So if you go up that next package, it's ridiculous what I'm paying right now. It's just stupid, and I've got to find another company. And USAA, I'm getting less and less impressed with them. Years ago they were the best.
Mhm.
Now I don't know what happened.
Well, that's why we left was the pricing. I like they do give white glove service. Okay. So I get that. And I've had, some claims early on with USA. So I'm like, okay, we'll hang out with them because they give us white glove, service and you pay a slight premium for it. So that I understand. I can get that. Right. And then it just got to where we're like, dude, we're paying like over $1,000 more for this than we are for Progressive, Geico, whatever. And Geico now, I mean, they've streamlined it. They've got their own collision facilities that you go to. It's all contracted, all that stuff. And when I actually called, we switched years ago. I called USAA. I was like, hey, is there anything you can do? And the lady was literally like, you need to go somewhere else. And she's like, there's nothing we can do. You are overpaying and there's nothing I can do on my end. I'm like, oh, that made it, that's worth it to me. So I think I called Progressive and Geico, and Progressive is kind of like the Southwest Airlines, for car insurance. It's like, I don't know if I'm gonna do that. That's right up there. That's just above the general, right? So I went with Geico, and I was like, okay, they tend to be. And I've seen some of the Geico service centers around here or whatever. Dude, I've had them for heck, probably 8 years now. Love them. No issues. I'll take it back. I had one glass coverage issue, but again, the amount was so small it wasn't worth arguing. But
Yeah,
customer service wise, and with my boy, and you guys have heard this, over the several years, I've had several claims through Geico through my son, and it's they've all been great, man.
good. Can you explain to me how USAA called and asked if I was eligible for some sort of coverage and I was considering it? It was some sort of liability, something I don't remember. But I was like, maybe I will check into that because it's relatively cheap. So I call them up and they were looking, they said, oh, sorry, sir, you're not eligible for this coverage. And I'm like, what? Why not? Well, according to LexisNexis, you have 2 automobile accidents over the past 2 years. And I'm like, that's not correct. And they're like, no, they're both in Washington State. And my daughter is a horrible driver. And she got in 2 accidents, both her fault. She actually got in 3 accidents. 2 were her fault and 1 was not. It's like, you're a bad driver. But how did those go on my record? I mean, even if the vehicle is registered in your name, it still shouldn't go on your record. So my question is, how did that happen? How did those 2 accidents get on my record?
I,
And
I
that's
think
one
it's
of the
actually
reasons my
because
rates are so high.
I think it's because the vehicle's in your name. That's why.
Jesus.
But it's like that with everything now. Like when I forget what it was. We were looking at different homeowners insurance for whatever coverage you have with your mortgage or whatever. Dude, they pulled up. They're like, oh yeah, same thing. We pulled up a background check, and you had a whatever claim, 8 years ago back in Maryland. I'm like, well, one, I mean, I filed a claim, but like the city paid for all of that. Like I had to file the claim, and they're like, dude, the problem is there was no recourse. Like, sorry, this is what it says. You had a claim on here. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't pay it. Like somebody else paid this. Doesn't matter. It says on here that you had a claim, and that's what they look at. You've had X amount of claims, so now your insurance goes up 22% or
That's
whatever the case
ridiculous.
is.
It's just ridiculous, man. And I'm learning a hard lesson about health insurance right now too. Holy cow. Wow, dude. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's open season, right? And I had recently had to get
Right.
my own health insurance, and we elected to go with Cobra, which everybody knows is ridiculous, but we had really good coverage. So like, we'll suck this up for a few months and go and shop around, for a few months, see what's best. What I'm seeing right now is all of these insurance sites, whether it's Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, uh, United Health, whatever, they're all tied in to the healthcare.gov, all of them.
Yep.
So if you go to Humana and you're shopping around for a policy, and on the other screen you've got Blue Cross Blue Shield and you're shopping for a policy, everything looks the same. It all looks the same. Like you'd think there'd be different inputs or something. And then you go to the healthcare.gov site and it looks the same as the other ones. And I'm like, wow. And it says, yeah, if you with subsidies, or no, not with subsidies. Maybe it does say with subsidies. With subsidies, this gold plan is usually $1,200 a month, but with subsidies, it's only $300. Well, guess what, dude? I don't qualify for any of that stuff because the cutoff for subsidies is $60,000 a year. So my question is, I mean, what we're paying right now, just for me and my wife, would make your nose bleed if I told you at what it is every month. It is ridiculous for two people. So what I'm seeing is that health insurance is basically tied to employment, period. So my
Yep.
question with that is, if you're a contractor, right? As like you decided to open a company, you're going to build houses, and it's just you right now, and you're building houses or you're pouring concrete or whatever you're doing. It's just you, your wife, and your two young kids, and you've decided to go out on your own, be an independent contractor. How on earth can you afford health insurance? You can't. I mean, it is stifling growth. It is for small businesses in particular. It's ridiculous, man. I mean, I don't know how much you've looked into that. It is absolutely insane. I don't know how people afford it. I have no idea how people afford it.
Well, a lot of them don't, and that's why they went back. The healthcare system's been broke for a while, and it was broke before the Affordable Care Act. Also known as Obamacare. And the problem is now under ACA, you have to pay for everybody else because they want single payers, what they want. So you're paying for everybody else, regardless of what your situation. And it's all purely, income based, right? So that's what they look at. Hey, you make over 60K. So you need to pay for the guy that makes 30K that has no insurance or can't afford insurance. So you're going to pay for that individual's insurance. The other part is it's state to state. We've discussed it before. It's like when you get to places like Maryland, I forget what they call it, but like out here in Arizona, you can do group insurance on your own. So like our neighborhood has insurance. They have like this Mormon community insurance, whatever it is. So basically they have like 1,200 families because that's why they want to, pull it to companies. They have like 1,200 families. And so that's a lot of money. And what they do is they do this cost sharing among the 1,200. You can do that. So if you were to start a company like that and you're in a place like Arizona, you could do like builders group insurance and then, contact a bunch of builders and, hey, we're all going to get together. We're going to pool our money together. We'll pool our personnel together and do it like a company would do. But a lot of these states don't allow that. Mostly, I think I'm probably talking outside of my ass here, but it's probably blue states that don't allow you to do that. So you have one or two choices. Either A, go through an employer, which if you're self-employed, that's not an option, or B, you just go out on your own, man, and try to buy it. And I can tell you, my nose would bleed, if I knew what you guys paid, but watching my daughter go through it on her own, because she came off of our policy off TRICARE for a young kid that, essentially was making no money, but is healthy, she's required to pay for everybody else because she has a job. It's insane, dude. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I'm like, I've heard some numbers from, and obviously being retired military and stuff, I went 20 some odd years and just had no clue how that works. And then once I retired and got to what I'm doing now, you start to see those numbers. Yeah, dude, I have no idea. I have no idea how people afford to pay for healthcare, and that's why they had to go with the fine, right? With Obamacare, because people were saying, no, I'm just not going to get it because I can't afford it. So finally the government, thank God they took it away, found it was unconstitutional. Like, well, we're going to fine you if you don't get healthcare.
And call it a
Like what
tax.
the hell is that? You know?
Yeah. I don't know. It's and then so it's been a while since we recorded. I think before Thanksgiving, right? It's been a while. It's been probably almost a
It's been a
month.
minute. Yeah, because we've been on the road, like we left right after Thanksgiving, something like that.
Yeah, yep,
Yep.
that's right. And that first week we were gone, that first week of December was when that United Healthcare CEO got assassinated in Manhattan. And
Mhm.
what about that, man? What do you think? What do you think about that?
What's crazy about this is they what's his face, Luigi, Mangione or Mangione, whatever. He didn't even have like UNH coverage. You know what I mean? It's like he didn't even have coverage from those guys. He wasn't even denied a claim from them. They're talking about all back surgeries and this, that. It's twofold. So for one, there are a lot of people, and people need to pay attention out there. There are a lot of folks, I'm gonna tell you right now, they're on the left that are celebrating it or just short of celebrating. Hey, big CEO bad. Well, he deserved it. That's what they believe. I've seen that on TV, and man, that's a dangerous, that's a dangerous road to go down, right? And I can't believe how much rhetoric is out there about it. Now, it does seem like it's calmed down a little bit, from the first couple of days it happened or whatever. But I guess the other thing to this, and it's hard to articulate because I feel bad. And Brian Thompson, he was the CEO, so I didn't know the guy personally, but he had a family. You hate to see anybody die, except for terrorists and communists. They're fine, but uh, it's very crude. But man, these people are getting what they voted for. And you hate to say that on an individual basis because Brian Thompson did not deserve that. Um, but it's like, hey, when you have these years of defund the police and the rioting that's going on, and it's just, dude, this is what you asked for. It's like, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, there's a reason why when you look at Rudy Giuliani, when he became mayor of New York City, and he started putting buses, every fourth block because he put a judge in there, right? Because hey, you're going to make an arrest and you're going to take him to this bus here. There's a judge in there, and we're going to find you guilty or try you or whatever it is, and you're going to serve your like. He had to crack down. And when you have these major cities and you have the rhetoric towards the police, you have the sentiment towards the police that's gone downhill. And the police, in some cases, haven't helped themselves. Okay, so it's not all one way. And then you have this mass still even after that ruling with Daniel Penny, right? It's like you have all that going on. Like when you look at the overall population sentiment towards law enforcement has gone to crap. So that when you have that coupled with defund the police, what do you think is going to happen? And it's sad that it happened to him, but it could have happened to anybody, right? It's sad if it happens to anybody, but this is, it's like, hey, this is, it's a crude way of saying it. And I know it sounds heartless, but like, this is what they voted for. Unfortunately, I think we've seen after the Trump victory, right? And across the board, you're starting to see a lot more bounce back. A lot of folks, you're even hearing it in New York. Look at Mayor Adams, right? The 180 he's done, with illegal immigrants and this and that. It's like, hey, look, we can't have this. You can't have people getting schwacked on the street. And what pisses me off is it took, a CEO like Brian Thompson, it took that for this to make the major news and for it to be highlighted because people have been getting robbed on the subways in New York City. They've been getting beat up. We've seen people get stabbed, old ladies getting stabbed in broad daylight. Nobody cared. Like this was happening. And until finally, a Fortune 5 CEO gets schwacked, now everybody cares. It's just like, hey, man, you got to tighten up your shot group because, like, when you look at these policies they're pushing for and they're defending, this is what it leads to, right? You have to have some type of law and order.
See, and you're talking about one side of this is where you and I are going to definitely have to be careful. Um, having worked around and with some corporate security types over the years, it's very difficult to convey to a company, especially a big company, how important these programs are. And they're like, well, where's the return on investment? We're just not seeing it. So you got to figure it out. We working counterintelligence for so long. Same thing with a commander. Well, what's my return here? Because if I put these measures into place, it's going to hamper either my readiness or my maneuver capability, whatever. And it's like, well, you have to because it's a big picture, right? You don't have to, but here's your risk. Here's your risk reward, and the risk, the commander owns that. So they got to make a decision. Same thing in the corporate world, but dollars are involved, and it's very difficult to convince them that this is worth it. And they're like, well, nothing's happened. It's like, yeah, nothing's happened because you have this program. Well, we'll just take the risk and maybe cut a few hundred, corporate security jobs. And it's just, dude, I don't know. I mean, I guarantee you, I don't guarantee. I imagine that there's a lot of hand wringing going on at places like, United Health Group and some of these other major corporations. Like, man, we really need to relook our security policy because The news was saying that there were active threats on him going out 10 days before the actual incident. And it's
Absolutely.
like, okay, I bet there's just a lot of hand wringing, and there's probably a lot of people trying to cover their asses right now at that company in particular. Because in my experience, a lot of these corporate security positions, just across the board, you know, the people who run them, who are the senior directors and stuff, have very little experience in security or safety. Very little. They've got an MBA and they know how to make a Visio flow chart. Sure, that's great, but very, very little experience in that. And yeah, the finger can be pointed at the general feeling of the people, defund the police, like you were saying, but a lot of it's got to be pointed right back at that company. Now, could they have done something to prevent that? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Uh, Manhattan, where he was, I've been in that area before. It is pretty safe area. I mean, right outside of a hotel at 6:45 in the morning. I mean, yeah, you put your risk analysis on. It's like the likelihood of something happening, but then coupled with the threats that he was getting for the past 10 days, I wonder if he was even briefed on anything. I'd probably not. It's just, I don't know, man. There's a lot of frustration with that. And, we'll see. I don't know how much is going to change in the long term. What I was telling my wife is I bet they'll put security on their other CEOs for about a year. And
Well,
then it'll just,
he had a PSD team. He left him in Minnesota.
yeah, yeah. And that was a bad call. Who advised him to do that? Well, I can tell you who probably advised him, but that person doesn't really know what they're doing.
Well, and that's the
So
problem, right? Because I think you have a lot of folks inside there, not just with UNH, with a lot of these big companies, and everybody just assumes, three-letter agency, you're an expert in it. It's like, no, very few. And I tell you this, man, you probably agree with it. I'm assuming. I know Joshua. It's like I've worked with a lot of corporate folks at that, security type, industry, or in the security type industry, and it's like very few have impressed me, and very few did I actually think were competent. Like, okay, you know what you're doing here. And that's what happens. Oh, you work for this three-letter agency. There you go. You can be our CSO or whatever. And because there's a difference, because I think, and again, this is all hindsight, but I think this is how we generally operate. Understanding that, especially in the corporate world, it comes down to revenue. It comes down to money. Okay. But again, there's a side of that where you have human lives, and even that has an impact on money, as far as taking hits on your stock price or this, that if something happens, and that can affect recruiting and retention. It goes down the road. But if I am that CSO or that person in charge of security, like, here's the deal, here's the layout, and here's what I recommend based on this threat level, that based on my threat assessment. And at that point, what you have to do is make that C-suite make that decision. Like, I am fine, go back to active duty days. Sir, here's what I recommend. Blah, 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 blah. Here you go. And he says, got it, tracking. This is what we're doing. Hey, man, I stated my case. I articulated it the best I could. And the commander is making a command decision. And this is what they're going with. I go back, and I don't know this in the specific case, but it's like, hey, was that case ever fought for? Was it clearly articulated what the threat is? Hey, here's what we recommend. Here's what you need to do. I'm betting no. I'm betting no, just based on the competency of the people that I've worked with similar fields over the last 10 years. So did this expert come out and lay out, hey, here's the deal, here's the situation, here's what we recommend, here's the protocols that we recommend for you? And at that point, did Brian Thompson turn around and say, you know what, thank you for all that input, and I am choosing not to implement these? Because that's a different ball game, right? But I'm betting that never happened. You go to I am betting, and I could be wrong here, who knows, but to me, if you came to me and said, hey, I know you're traveling from Minnesota to New York next week, and oh, by the way, we've got some active threats against you that we feel are credible, I'm probably not leaving my PSD back in Minnesota. That's just me.
yeah, probably not. But I guarantee you also that money played an aspect, because all these companies live quarter to quarter these days, especially the Fortune 5s. They live quarter to quarter. They don't make decisions 5 years out. And more than likely there was some sort of travel restriction. Travel's been locked down pretty tight, and it costs money to send a PSD out. That costs money, and I'm sure that factored into the decision. Now, did Brian Thompson make that? I don't know. Probably not. But it factored in. Here's our recommendation, so on and so forth. Just be careful while you're there, basically, you know? And but here's the rest of the story. Since that happened, the day before that happened, United Health Group stock was at about 628, 628 per share. Today, it closed at 499. 499. You could say, oh, well, that doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with earnings reports and this and that. No, it doesn't. I'm telling you, because Humana and the others, they're not suffering like these guys are. 499 went all the way down to like 480 something. That's a huge
Wow.
hit. And it's like, man, you know how you know how much money they lost over this past month. Enough to implement a lot of security and safety protocols that should have been implemented a long time ago. It's just, hey, man, those chickens came home to roost, and it's a shame that it happened because guy definitely did not deserve that. I'm with you, man. All the talk early on about the people, well, he had it coming, and the Elizabeth Warren saying, well, it's a horrible thing, but Bernie Sanders saying, yeah, it's a horrible thing, but everything that precedes but is absolutely, they don't believe it. They're all on board with CEOs that they don't like, getting schwacked. It's yeah, man, it was a creepy thing, man, seeing some enterprising communist out there like made posters in Manhattan, hit list of CEOs. And there were a couple on there that I know that I've met personally. And it's like, that was creepy. And I just imagine how those people must be feeling, feeling like they're targeted like that. It's brutal,
Well, I mean, go back to Scalise, being shot. You had a Supreme Court justice that man, did we luck out on that one, right? But it goes back to, well, you know what? It's fine though because it's people that I don't agree with. AOC came out and said the same thing. It's like, and here's what pisses me off about it. And I get it. Healthcare system's broke for a lot of folks, but hey, man, you had the Affordable Care Act that everybody wanted, right? The backroom deal that everybody wanted. It was so, everybody wanted it so bad that we couldn't let anybody read it. You got to pass it to know what's in it. And you had Barry, with that for several years. Then you've had the Joe Biden presidency over the last 4 years. So it's like, so why do we have any healthcare issues? I thought that was supposed to work everything out. I thought that was supposed to solve everything because what you're finding is, and this kind of goes back to the money and quarterlies, right? Is that just because you have healthcare doesn't mean you can afford healthcare, right? I mean, that's the thing is, so technically we can say you're covered, but not if you can't afford any of it.
Yeah.
Not if you can afford anything. If you can't afford your premiums, you can't afford your co-pays, you can't afford any of the services that you need. So yeah, so they can check the box and say, hey, you're covered. Well, yeah, but I can't afford anything. That's the problem. And it leads to a bigger issue. And part of this goes into what you're saying with quarterly earnings, because now one, you have, and this is the dire situation, I believe, is you've got symptom-based healthcare coupled with a healthcare company that operates off quarterly earnings. Right. And the tie there is, well, I need to make more money as the healthcare company. And how do we make more money? We make more money by keeping people sick.
Yeah.
Okay. Or treating the symptom and not actually treating the cause. And I think when you get into, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of this later with, Robert F. Kennedy and, HSS and this and that. I mean, my whole thing with that is, and this is what I've gathered from listening to him on Joe Rogan's podcast, hearing his speeches, this and that. Like, at the end of the day, he may have his personal beliefs on vaccines and whatever the case is. But I think the overall premise is, hey, man, you need to be educated. Like, it is the government's job to provide that information to us, to its citizens, so I can make an informed decision with my doctor. And I don't care, if it's vaccines, if it's the food coloring, whatever, right? I should have the information. I mean, that was the whole point of the nutritional, label on the box, was so that people could read it. The problem is there are other things on there that you don't know what they are. So it's like, hey, government, if everything's on the up and up and it's all healthy and good for you, then here, show it to me. Tell me what it is. Let me make an informed decision. And if I want to eat that ho-ho knowing it's going to cause me diabetes, then that's on me. I can do that. Okay. But that's not the case. You're not, because if you don't like all the vaccines, well, then you're an anti-vaxxer and you're a conspiracy theorist. Like, well, no, there are certain vaccines that I definitely want. I think they even tried to beat up Trump with polio. They asked him if you saw him the other day. They're like, "Hey, what do you think about the polio vaccine?" He's like, "I love the polio vaccine. I don't want polio. Do you want polio?" There's nobody that I know that wants polio. Guess what? Everybody probably needs the polio vaccine. However, you might be that one person that whatever your medical condition is, whatever your family history is, maybe that vaccine's not for you. Should you be kept out of school because of that? No, that's between you and your doctor. The same people that are telling you, hey, abortions and this and that, it's healthcare and it's between you and your doctor. But for some reason, when it comes to like vaccines and medicine, well, that's not just between you and your doctor. Now it's okay for the government to get involved with that stuff. All I'm asking is, hey, put the information out there and let me make that decision with me and my doctor.
Yeah, and talking about the cost of healthcare and everything, some people out there might be saying, well, hey, Roger and Luke, you're such a big believer in the markets. The market should sort this out, man. Some enterprising companies should come in there and just, provide an alternative. Well, the problem with that is the same problem I have when people say religion has caused more wars than anything. Same thing. It's when government is involved. The healthcare industry is
Yes.
so heavily subsidized by the government that it's not
And
even the free
regulated.
market, and regulated. That's right. And it's not even the free market anymore. It's so yeah, I don't know what is going to turn this around. I don't know what it is, but they are on their way to getting what they want, which is single payer. For all intents and purposes, it's single payer now, because there's some
Right.
idiot out there, who makes, probably on paper makes 40,000 a year on paper, probably in reality makes closer to 120 a year because they're a contractor getting paid in cash or whatever, who has better healthcare or the same healthcare coverage as me, but is paying a fifth of the price. And that's the kind of stuff that makes you mad. It's the kind of stuff that upsets you, you know? And
And single payer, we mean government. Okay, we're talking about
yeah,
government.
yeah, yeah.
Everybody's on Medicare or Medicaid or whatever it is. I forget the difference between the
I
two.
mean, we're only a heartbeat away from that being the case right now, really. When you look at it, I mean, because like you said, we're already subsidizing those who make over 60,000 are subsidizing those who don't. That's just the bottom line. And it goes back to this, if you let's say you are scraping by at 59,000 a year and you're paying 250 a month for a gold plan, you know, what's your incentive to take that promotion making 75, knowing that now you're going to be paying for a family of four? Now you're not going to be paying 250 anymore. You're going to be paying 2,100 a month. And that canceled out. In fact, that's a pay cut. That's a
Yep.
pay cut. It's just, yeah, it's a mess. So with this kid, Mangione, I thank God for Elon Musk, because he left his X profile up, and I think Facebook left his Facebook page up for a while.
Right.
And man, it just seemed to me, I read through his stuff and I was like, well, he seemed like a fairly intelligent kid. Seemed pretty smart. Valedictorian of his class. He's pretty well spoken on X and on Facebook. And funny enough, around 2020 to 2021, he kind of just disappeared off the face of social media, which coincided with COVID. And I think something came along, broke that kid's brain. COVID probably didn't help. There's rumors or whatever that he, went to Mexico to try, some of the hallucinogens, some of those therapies and things like that. But again, we're not going to get a toxicology report on this kid because he's not dead, So
Right.
that's not going to happen. I just the trial will. He's been indicted on terrorism charges, actually, which is interesting. But because his manifesto and all that, and he even admitted in his own manifesto, he admitted, "Look, I'm not educated enough to make an intelligent argument, or to come up with a solution." So that to me is a crazy person, someone who has lost grip with reality. You're intelligent. You should know, well, I'm not smart enough. Maybe I should educate myself before I take the step of committing an act of terrorism against this industry. I think that kid had a break with reality. I think he is not well. And I hazard to say that I think COVID played a role in that. The lockdowns and the social distancing and all that. I think it played a role, as we said it would. I'm not saying that's the main driver. I'm not. I'm saying it played a role. It did.
No, I'm sure it did. And I think, what's going to be interesting is when he finally goes to trial, you're going to see two very powerful forces, on both ends of this, because you're going to have the healthcare company, right? And the healthcare companies that are going to have a say in this. And then, pay close attention to how many politicians come out and speak, against and for the actions that he took. It's no different than the, Daniel Penny trial. Dude, thank God he was found not guilty, right? I mean, and even after he was found not after, well, let me put it this way: the verdict was not guilty on one count. The other count, I think, was actually left without prejudice. So in theory, they could charge him again with it. But the whole point being is, look at how many people came out right after that. And I get the father of Jordan Neal. Like I get that there's an emotional thing. I always discount that and just kind of give them a hall pass. But everybody else and these other politicians that came out and are still like, hey, this dude needs to be in prison, needs to be in jail. I mean, that's the rhetoric that you've got to pay attention to. That's the dangerous rhetoric, because these are people that it's no different than with the electoral college crap that's going on right now. These are people that like, hey, man, it's not about rule of law. It's not about what's right. It's not about what's just. It's my way or the highway. So you'll take my vaccine or we're going to fire you. Okay. You're going to believe in my thought process, or, hey, murder and you's fine. You don't believe in what I believe in. Well, you know what? Maybe you should go to jail. Okay. Oh, by the way, I don't like the way you voted. So we're going to change that system because you're going to vote the way that I need you to vote. These are the same people that brought out the damn super delegates. These are the same people that screwed Joe out of his primary with 11 million votes. Right. But because, again, it's not about any of that stuff. It's about them being in control and them having power. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with, the people that quote unquote agree with what Mangione did versus those that are like, hey, man, a CEO, not just a CEO, somebody was murdered in plain daylight, like in Manhattan, in a high rent area of Manhattan. Like, this should be a no brainer, right? I mean, everybody should come out and be like, hey, man, this is a pretty easy one for everybody to get on board with. But I tell you, going back to the Daniel Penny thing, I mean, between the election and the Daniel Penny trial, some sliver of my faith in humanity has actually come about. I have a little bit more faith in humanity with the Daniel Penny trial. I was actually one, I think we all donated money to his defense fund, but I was genuinely happy that the dude came back and won, or was found not guilty. But at the same time, it's like, dude, I cannot imagine the emotional and physiological stress that dude has gone under over the last year. I can't even fathom it, dude. And I hope that guy does as many interviews. I hope he's got a book deal, because he's going to need it. He's going to need the money. They've already got civil suits against him and this and that. Dude, I hope that dude goes out there and makes $100 million.
Yeah, me too.
Because he's going to need it.
You know, these people, we always say it, they need to be careful what they wish for. Because like you're saying, yeah, you take note of all of these things that are being said, because it's the undercurrent that's dangerous. It's the undercurrent of what these people are saying is dangerous. And man, be careful what you wish for, because if things like this, quote unquote vigilante justice, terrorism, if that type of stuff gets normalized, watch out for the other side, dude, because we're way, way more prepared for something like that than you are. Way more prepared. And whatever. I don't know. It's just be careful what you wish for. Yeah, I think Daniel Penny, Trump invited him to the skybox at the Army Navy game, and Daniel Penny was up there with Trump and Musk and JD Vance. And
dude, how'd we lose that game?
Yeah, I don't know.
One,
You never
Army,
can
you
tell
cost me $5. You cost me $5.
They cost me, $1 plus a parlay, but you never can tell with that game. That game's a coin toss. Navy could be ranked number one. Army, lost, 10 games, and it'd still be a toss up. It's just, that's a weird game. But, I got in a discussion with someone I know really well. who Roger, is strange to watch because this person is slowly becoming more liberal in their thought processes, and it's just interesting to watch because it's happening really slowly, and I think it's because of a lot of influences, that's around this person a lot. And they were saying, I was like, hey, so the people you hang out with, they're pretty upset about Trump, and they're like, oh, you have no idea, they're devastated. And I'm like, well, why are they so devastated? And it threw it right back at me. He's like, well, why was it such a horrible reaction on to Biden getting elected? And it's like, that wasn't about Biden. That was because a lot of Trump supporters felt they got cheated, not because we were so upset with Biden. And I was, of course, I was just like, man, this is going to be a train wreck when Biden got elected. But I wasn't devastated over it. Go back, look
Right.
at the game tape. We put on 4 years of podcasts about it. It wasn't the end of the world. But this person's like, oh, some of the cabinet picks. I'm like who? Like who? They're like, well, the other day he just put Dr. Oz as Health and Human Services. I was like, first of all, that's not accurate. Health and Human Services is RFK Jr., which we can have a discussion about that, who used to be and still is pretty much a Democrat. But Dr. Oz is Medicare and Medicaid. And I was like, do you even know what Medicare and Medicaid really is? And who was it before? And they kind of gave up on that line, and they were like, well, Pete Hegseth. That's one we're just not sure of. And I was like, okay, I'll give you that. I was like, okay, I am agnostic when it comes to Pete Hegseth. I don't care one way or the other. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I don't care one way or the other is because he can't be worse than Lloyd Austin. I was like,
Very true.
explain to me how he's worse than what we currently have. How is he worse? And then I went down the list of the failures throughout Lloyd Austin's tenure as SecDef, along with his failures when he was on active duty. And of course, they couldn't explain it. And then they're like, well, with Tulsi Gabbard, she has no experience in intelligence. I was like, how is she worse than like an Avril Haines? And they don't even know who the current ODNI is, but they're just like, I don't like who's coming in. It's like,
Because it's Trump.
Because it's Trump. That's right. And then the big one was he's going to be a dictator. Everyone's afraid he's going to be a dictator. It's like, well, that one soundbite aside that's really taken out of context, it's if we only had a track record of when the guy was president for 4 years in the past to prove that he's not going to be a dictator. I mean,
No, you're wrong. There is historical. There is historical performances here where, or examples where dictators came into office for 4 years, were elected to office, weren't dictators, lost the next election, left, and then came back another 4 years after winning an election to be a dictator. Because that's how dictators operate.
It's just it's the derangement. But it's here's the thing though, is like you can hate this as much as you want, but the guy right now definitely has a mandate. It's crazy how the stars are kind of aligning, because if you ever were
But
setting
tariffs don't work.
oh my God, that was another one that they brought up. They're like, well, tariffs. And I was like, do you know how tariffs work? Do you know what they actually are? Of course, yes, it's a tax on imports, exports, things like that. But it's more of a stick and carrot. It's more of a stick. It's a threat. It's a tool. And it's already working. It's already working because, man, Justin Trudeau may very well have to resign because of the threat of tariffs. Because in the face of Trump's threat of 25% on tariffs from goods coming in from Canada, Justin Trudeau came up with this whole spending package on how to stimulate the economy. And like 2 of his ministers resigned. 2 of the people on his cabinet resigned, said, this will not work. This is not going to work. This is not how you prepare for tariffs. He may, and I mean, the whole parliament is turning against him. Not the whole, but almost half the parliament is against him at this point. This guy may have to resign because of Trump, which is insane. Or Trump is a big, catalyst for that.
Right.
I mean, he is super popular right now. I mean, this is crazy.
You know what? Because people, again, like you said, you've got 4 years of history. Like nobody read his book, clearly. I mean, because that's what he does, right? We've said it a million times. You throw out something stupid extreme. Everybody's like, oh my Lord, I can't believe he's doing this. And then you know what? You dial it back about 25%. Everybody's like, oh yeah, that's way better. And that's what he does. It's the tariff thing, because then you've got Macron, you've got Trudeau, you've got Mexico. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, whoa, 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 because you know what? It hurts them just as bad, if not worse. And because that we are, theoretically a capitalist society or economy, our businesses will adjust. That's what they do. Now, do some tariffs get passed out? Yeah, some of them do. Okay. But the importer is the one who eats those tariffs. They're the ones who are responsible for paying those tariffs. And what's going to happen is those businesses, and again, that's if they were fully, 100% tariff. It's like, hey, those businesses that are more efficient, have a more efficient operating model, have a better revenue model, those are the ones who will be successful, right? But the whole point is, I don't even know if Trump cares about tariffs or not. It's just like you said, it's a stick. Hey, guys and gals, here's what's going to happen, because you don't have to put tariffs on everything. You just tariff one item. Let me take a couple $100 million out of your exports to us. Like you said, I mean, that there can sway some opinions pretty big. What I do like about what's going on with this, and I think we mentioned this during his first 4 years, I like fighters, and I think he does too, because, going back to like with Trump, and then you go back to Hegseth, right? So, you notice how quickly, so when Pete Hegseth first came out and he drinks, the guy was an infantryman in the office. No shit, he drinks. Like, I wouldn't expect anything else that he drinks. And he partied like a rock star. I get it. Most of us did as E4s. But point being, right after that, what happened? The sexual harassment claim came out. And what I love about Pete Hegseth was, hey, so I'm going to countersue. If I do not get confirmed because of this, I'm suing the shit out of you. That disappeared real quick, right? Because what happens is this. It's different when the DNC goes to little Jody and says, hey, we just need you to go out there and throw something out there in the public. Throw it out there in the media. We're not going to court. We're not going to try you. We're not going to try the guy. We're not going after any money. We just need you to make a claim. And the DNC is going to be here to support you. Okay. And then Hegseth coming back. Now, who knows what the truth is? But to me, if I'm him and I'm saying I'm innocent, hey, I'm going to countersue you. And I'm going to countersue you for tens of millions of dollars. Okay. DNC ain't paying that. Okay. Now, little Jody, who went out there and made that statement to whatever, the Hill or whatever it was, or Axiom, is like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me recalculate this here, because I'm sitting at home at night in a 1-bedroom apartment, making $3,000 a month. And this guy is threatening to countersue me for, $10 million if he's not confirmed on an event that I'm claiming happened that didn't happen or don't have proof. The calculus changes, right? And then all of a sudden that just went away. You don't hear about that anymore. You've got Trump, with the Stephanopoulos and ABC, $15 million settlement, because Stephanopoulos came out on 15 different occasions and called him a rapist. And now the media is all, oh man, this is unprecedented. You know what? Here's the solution to this. Don't lie. Don't lie. Just call it what it is. There's a reason why, you remember when like Kamala first started her campaign, they were talking about the convicted felon, right? And they had to stop using that line. They had to stop using that line because I think with New York state law, you're not actually convicted until you start your sentencing. So I am sure that the Trump campaign reached out and was like, hey, you're going to cease and desist. And again, you want to fix those problems, don't lie. But I like the fact that they're fighting. And I hope that's who he has in his cabinet, because at the end of the day, he's the president. So whether Robert F. Kennedy, likes vaccine, doesn't like vaccines, wants red Cheerios or Fruit Loops or doesn't or whatever, he's not the president. Okay. He's going to serve, whatever Trump's policies are, whatever guidance and direction that he wants to go. And what he's going to do is he's going to advise, the president, and the president will make a decision. He say, okay, that's great. This is the direction that we're going to go. So it's not like there's a checks and balance, or that checks and balance doesn't exist. It's there. RFK is just not going to go off on some whim and do this and that, or any of them, none of them, right? None of the department heads are going to do any of that. That's going to all be within the construct of what President Trump wants. So I dig it, man. I like it.
I hope he follows through on abolishing daylight savings time, because if there's one thing that's so ridiculous, is that, and making Canada the 51st state and buying Greenland. I hope we do all that stuff, man. But daylight savings is so ridiculous.
Let me jump on your daylight savings thing, and then you can go off on your spiel with it. From everything I've read on X and everything I've seen on the news, because I live in Arizona, right? So we don't do daylight savings time. I don't know how I'm still alive. Like, do they realize, like these people, these quote unquote experts that are on X and the news every day, like, do they realize that Arizona doesn't do daylight savings time? Right? We stay on Mountain Standard Time throughout the year, but I should be dead, according to everybody and everything I've read on X. All these experts.
You know who also doesn't observe daylight saving time? My dogs. They don't. Uh, their eating time, we established like a pretty set. My wife and I finally got on a routine, and we got settled on a pretty tight routine where they're being fed about 7 o'clock. 10 minutes either way, 7 o'clock. And when we got on that, that's about when the sun was starting to go down. Well, now it ain't 7 o'clock anymore. It's 5 o'clock because that's when the sun is starting. That's when they're expecting their food. They're not looking at
Sure.
time. They're looking at nature. They're looking at the sun and things like that. It's like daylight saving time is so antiquated. It has to do, well, there were a lot of reasons they did it to begin with, but a lot of it had to do with farming and school. Those two things, farming and school. And, they needed more hours of sunlight, after school was out back in the day. It's also why there was a summer break for so long, is so that those kids could be out in the fields working back when we were primarily a agrarian farming type economy. It's just so antiquated. It's ridiculous. And the older I get, the more I see it affects me. It actually affects my cycle just a little bit. It's like, man, it's just, same as like jet lag. Jet lag affects me way more now that I'm older. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to all the stuff Trump's going to do. I mean, there's so much to talk about with that. But one thing that popped into my mind that I wanted to ask you about, because there are a lot of people doing their purity tests on X. Did you ever watch Yellowstone?
Yes.
Okay. Are you still watching Yellowstone?
We actually just finished it,
Okay.
like 3-4 days ago.
So the ending of it, where everybody's mad about this on X, Jack Posobiec and all these right wing people. It's like Taylor Sheridan sold out. He sold out to the man. He went woke because apparently the Duttons had to get rid of their ranch, right? And they
Spoiler
handed
alert.
over.
Yes.
Yeah, well, dude, I mean, it's all over X, but and then the Native Americans come in and take it over, and it's like, let me ask you this: having seen Taylor Sheridan's other stuff. First of all, it was promised in 1883. He promised in 6 generations you can have it back. I don't even care, because the Indian chief said in generations this will be back in our hands, and he's like, well, probably so. In 6 generations you can have it. Now, keep it in mind everything that Taylor Sheridan's done, going back to Sicario and all these other things. There a lot of times there's a deeper meaning to what he's saying, the overall theme. Do you think he went woke, or do you think there's like a little bit deeper meaning to that?
Neither. I think that they did not factor in the Kevin Costner effect. I mean, I think Taylor Sheridan, laid out a storyline, right? That was going to go however long it was going to go. I don't think anybody thought that Kevin Costner was not going to finish out the season. So now you have to rewrite the rest of that story. And then when you get into like Kevin Costner and even with Taylor Sheridan, they talk about doing these episodes. I forget where we read it. It might have been something my wife brought up, but basically Costner's like had to fund a lot of this stuff on his own with Sheridan. And apparently, and I don't know anything about the movie industry, TV industry. I have no idea how that works, but apparently they do not like sequels. And so the only way to continue doing this stuff was like, hey, man, you got to put a lot of your money down. And I think Kevin Costner was really like running out of money to fund a lot of this stuff, and along with Sheridan with whatever he's put in for this. So I think you look at finances being an issue, but more than that, I believe Sheridan's original story was probably very different than what we actually saw with the last, what was it, 5 or 6 episodes?
I
Because
don't
I mean, it's
know.
a huge shift.
I mean, all I'm doing is reading about it. And, what I see from that is, and again, I didn't see it, I'm just reading about it. But the way I understand it is one of the reasons they had to let it go was because of quote unquote the inheritance tax. They just could not afford it anymore. They couldn't keep it. Right. I mean, Is that kind of how it
Yeah,
went?
yeah, yep, absolutely.
Well, there
Had
you
to come
go.
up
I
with so
mean,
much money. Yep.
that's part of the thing. It's part of like the thrust. It's like once the government gets involved and starts taxing things, you no longer own anything. They own it, and they can drive you right out of it. And it's like with him, because Taylor Sheridan sympathizes a lot with Native Americans. They're, with what they've had to go through. Not sympathizes. He understands the situation very, very well. He understands that this was a brutal, brutal place before Manifest Destiny. He understands, but by the same token, they were put on reservations and they didn't do themselves any favors. The government didn't do them any favors. It's just a messy situation. And so what? It's going back to the Native Americans. It's going to be theirs again. What are they going to do with it?
Build a
Nothing.
casino.
Put a casino on it. Whatever. So what? It's like the government is going to get involved in some way and ruin it all for everyone. It's just so people saying, "Oh, he went woke." I don't buy it. I don't buy that for a second, especially after watching Landman. Holy cow. You watching that
Oh,
one?
dude, that's pretty awesome, dude.
God.
Well, I know you like it because all the daggum Texas Tech crap out there.
Oh
We
man.
watched, I think we watched, was it the second or third, maybe the third episode last night. So don't ruin it for me. But yeah, we're a couple episodes into it, and I totally dig it.
Yeah, I think we got to the fourth. I think we watched the fourth last night or the night before. It's really good. I could do without all the bikini scenes and stuff like that, the gratuitous nonsense. It's like, how
Yeah,
does
me
that add
too.
to the story?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
absolutely.
It's ridiculous though. It doesn't add to the story. It's gratuitous.
Whatever,
It's
dude.
the same
Don't be
Game
a
of
hater.
Thrones thing. Dude, it's not necessary. It doesn't drive the plot forward. I'm too much of a purist with that.
I am with you though. Like when I look, it's funny because you obviously, and maybe it's built for the 18-year-old, 19-year-old. Like, hey, I'm watching this because there's some TNA in it or whatever. So I get that motivation. But more and more now, specifically with characters and things they say and things they do, I'm like, how does this drive the storyline? Right. And maybe it's just because we're getting older. But it's like I remember, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but even with Yellowstone, like when I watched the last couple episodes, like there were some things done there, and I'm like, what does this have? Like, this is the finale. So how does this drive the scenario? How does this drive the storyline and the plot? And some things I missed, maybe just not smart to figure it out or whatever. But more, yeah, I get it, dude. Nowadays, more and more, I'm looking into stuff like that.
So, oh man, people are already saying Kamala Harris considering a 2028.
Please, please, for the love of everything that is holy, let her run in 2028.
She's such a disaster. It's going to be Josh Shapiro. I agree with Josh on that
Or
one. It
Newsom, right?
could be
It could be
Newsom.
Newsom.
Could be, I suppose, but we'll see how
Well, I mean, they're
California
going to
goes.
have a solid primary. I mean, you're going to have Shapiro, I believe. I believe you're going to have Newsom. You might have Bashir. You're probably going to have Westmore. You're going to probably have Whitmer in there, I would think. And so then you look at Kamala and you say, well, is she primary again? Well, one, you're going to have a primary. There's no way they just give her the gavel again. But now she's talking about, flip flopping with Gavin Newsom, where she goes to run to be the governor of California. And it's like, we talked about this, I think, last episode. Do you go from being the VP to being a governor?
That's a
Like,
step
really?
down. That's a step
It
down.
is.
That's why VP is not that great of a job, man. It's like there's only one higher than that. It's like, man, and my understanding is, you very rarely go back to state government after federal. Either way, I
You
mean,
can't.
Ron DeSantis did when he went from senator to governor, but I think it could be argued, you wouldn't want to go from you wouldn't go from the Senate to state Senate, but governor
Right.
is a big deal because that's an executive position, and
Yeah.
it's so I can see that, but I don't know, man. Will she even win governor in California? Who knows?
Probably not.
People
I don't
do
think she
not
will.
like her, man. Whoa. Man, what is it with Trump running against just the worst candidates out there? Just the worst. Hillary
Because
Clinton and Kamala Harris.
they don't let the process play itself out. I mean, the one thing that we always complain and bitch about the GOP, because we had our years with McCain and stuff like that. It's like, they don't let the process play itself out. I mean, there's a very good chance that had they actually had a primary after they pulled the rug out from underneath Joe's feet, that they won or that they win. I mean, who knows what happens if you throw a Shapiro in there, right? Even a Gavin Newsom. I mean, I don't, I don't know if he would pull enough votes, or whatever. But you take him, you take a Whitmer that probably gives you Michigan. I mean, there were definitely some strategic plays there that if you just have the open primary, you know what, you might have a different outcome. But they've gone through, well, I mean, it again, like we kicked off the show with, they're the ones who started the super delegates. Well, you know what, you're this and that, so you deserve to be a super delegate, so you get to have 1,000 votes versus just one, versus just letting the primary play out. So they start with the super delegates, and then they evolve from that to just like, hey, Joe, we actually don't care that you got 14 million votes. Guess what, man? You're not running for us anymore. The current sitting president that won the primary, guess what? You're not running anymore, and we're going to pick this lady over here who has not won one vote. That's their problem, you know, and they got to fix it. And I think you even see, believe again, I keep saying this, I think on every episode, like, I don't know what happened to Fetterman, right? I don't know what happened to Fetterman because he's actually become, at least his rhetoric, more independent or more right leaning than what Manchin ever was. You know, I mean, he's actually making a lot of sense. I'm like, okay, I can actually live with a lot of what he's saying. Now, a lot of that you got to, you know, maybe it's the, playing both sides of the coin, right? Where I can say one thing, but, you know, what's his voting record going to be like? And I haven't really gone into what his voting record's been like over the last several months. But, you know, you look over this next year, especially as we have a Republican controlled House, Republican controlled Senate, and a Republican controlled, you know, White House. It'll be interesting to see what some of his voting is like. I mean, that's going to be the telltale sign there.
Well, I think Ben Shapiro said he is a fairly reliable Democrat vote, fairly reliable, which means 9 out of 10 times he's going to vote with the party, right? He's going to fall in line, but it's that 1 out of 10 that,
Yep.
you know, that's what we need more of that, dude. We need more of that. We really do, and I think that's obvious with this omnibus or this continuing resolution
Right.
omnibus that's going through right now. It's like, really, I mean, I understand, you know, what there has to be a continuing resolution. I get that, but voting themselves a raise this close to Christmas, I mean, yeah, dude, just doesn't look right. You know, doesn't smell
Yeah,
right.
and you know, and Johnson's catching a lot of flack right now. And I mean, here's the thing, because this will carry us through what, like March or something like that. So March is going to be, that's where the storybook or the storyline's going to come out, because right now you're still dealing. You know, you got to remember the newly elected members aren't sworn in yet. They don't start till January. So right now you're still dealing with the same numbers that you had. You know, very, very little movement. I don't even know what the number is right now because of all the vacancies and this and that. So you might not even have the majority anyway. So, you know, a continuing resolution is your best option. That's your best hope right now to keep the government open. It just is what it is. And I get it. You know, our guy Andy Biggs came out and was like, "Oh, this is all BS." And you people talk the talk, but you're not willing to what was it? No, because the numbers haven't changed, like we talked about. They haven't changed yet. Now, come January, new members are sworn in. It's a different ball game. So I think when you look at, hey, are we really serious about cutting government spending, that type of stuff? Are we trying to be fiscally conservative? You know, that's where you're going to see, hey, is that the road that we're going down? You know, what pisses me off right now is that you've got the Republicans saying, you know, we've got so much aid tied to this. And, you know, you're denying the people of North Carolina aid and you're denying the people of Florida aid. It's like, no, we're not. It's all the other pork and barrel spending that's in there. So don't try that, you know, don't pull the wool over my eyes. Just call it what it is. Hey man, this is what we got to have to get it through to keep the government open. And you know what? We will enforce or execute the GOP agenda come March after we're all sworn in. But you know what? They're scared because we talked about this before. When was the last time you've heard fiscal conservatism? You know, they want Doge to be successful. They want Doge to be successful because they're hoping that the spending and everything gets cut on the Doge side of the house and not in actual bills. That's what they want. You know, they want to show a reduction, in the deficit, a reduction in our debt. You know, if we ever actually get to that point, but they don't want it to come as part of their pork and barrel spending. They want it because, you know, well, there were a couple of departments that were eliminated. There were a couple, hey, we brought federal employees back to work, so 10% of them quit. So we're saving money on salaries, you know, that type of stuff. That's exactly what they want because the GOP is no longer the party of fiscal conservatism. I firmly believe that.
Oh yeah, that's a relic of the past for sure. There's probably like 1 or 2 people in Congress still believe in that, or gonna take a stand on it at least. I don't know if you saw that the House panel is votes to release the Gates ethics report. I was never
That
a
was
fan of Matt
surprising.
Gates. I was never a fan of Matt Gates. When I saw him on the floor of the RNC, that guy's a douche. He's a
Douchebag.
douche. Whatever. And I know douches can do a good job in the office and everything, but I got no love lost for that guy. I didn't think that was a good pick for AG. I'm glad he's not taking it. But again, I think that was one of Trump's negotiating tactics, really, to put him in there, to have everybody freak out. It's like, okay, we'll put this person in instead over here. Take some of the heat off. But yeah, I think he's a kind of a
When he's not
scumbag
even in
douchebag.
Congress anymore,
No,
right? He's not in Congress anymore. So it's like, why do you want to release it? And I tell you this, okay, let's release them all. You know that little funding pot that slush fund they've got there for all these sexual harassment suits against congressmen and senators and stuff that they have. Like, let's release all that stuff. Because I do think there are some legal ramifications there with releasing it with him not being in Congress anymore. And the DOJ investigated guy. Yeah, there's going to be some stuff that the pundits are going to run on or whatever the case is. But it's like, hey, at the end of the day, if there was something there that they could have charged him with, they would have charged him over the last 4 years, believe me, because he is a douchebag. Like, he's a guy that, you could punch him in the face, or I'd like to punch him in the face.
So you think there's a loose nuke in New Jersey or something? I saw that there was one report that some nuclear material, radioactive material, went missing from a van, and so I did some research on that. Kind of went down the rabbit hole. Yeah, it is, but it's a very minute amount of like something that has to do with PET scans. You know what the little thing looks like? It looks like a firing pin on an M4.
Right.
But it looks exactly like a firing pin. It's a little bit longer. It's shaped exactly like a firing pin. It's like, yeah, that's not really enough to do anything. But what do you think's going on with the drones? Now, there is a syndrome, Roger, and I meant to look it up before the podcast. But there's this syndrome. It's a sociological phenomenon where it's happened throughout history. A lot of it happens with urban legends and things like that, where everybody will see something at one time. Happened in Japan years ago, where everybody came down with the same sickness at the same time, and nobody actually had it. What do you think? You think this is something, or do you think it's that type of sociological phenomenon where everybody every light they see in the sky is a drone now, and there may be a few up, and it ain't in the thousands? I don't know. What do you think?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, one, it's 100% the government, military / contracting. If I'm the government, and you should want this, if you're DHS or any of that stuff, like, hey man, because I personally, just from some stuff I've read or whatever, I think, a lot of it is, radioactive detecting, sensing, that type of gamma rays, that type of stuff, because I think that's where you have to go when you look at, possible future terrorist attacks or whatever. That's the route that you gotta go down. That's the whole. I think it's a combination of, military doing testing on top of federal contracting, right? I mean, it's no big secret that Boeing, Lockheed, all these folks get contracted to build this stuff. I mean, look at what's going on in Ukraine with the drones, right? What's gone on over the last year. And I think when you look at, and in Israel, and when you look at our own federal government, I mean, there are smart folks that are sitting there. They're like, hey man, this is something we got to be ready for. So I think, you've got some censoring platforms there as well. There's no doubt in my mind that a year ago, 2 years ago, especially when you look at Ukraine, that, hey, we need to get some government contracts out there. So, they contract with it, and I just pick on Boeing. I just, they're one of the most well-known names. But all right, Boeing, you're on contract for $100 million to build 10,000 of these drones. Well, you know what? They got to test them. So they're going to take them. They're going to fly them up. They get FAA clearance. It's a government contract. So anyway, long story short, I think that's what we're seeing. And then I do think there was a combination of then, well, everything in the sky is a drone. It's like, well, no, not everything in the sky is a drone, but they're there's a big difference between that and then the Chinese weather balloon that, a couple of them that have floated across the US, and of course, in military fashion, and this is what leads to the conspiracy theories, they're not going to confirm or deny any of this stuff, right? They're just going to, they actually have come out and like put their foot in their mouths a couple of times. But it's like, hey man, you just don't say anything about it. I mean, I do think there should be enough elected, of our elected leaders that are briefed on this stuff, but I am 100% convinced it's a government, military / contracting thing.
Yeah, probably. Real they're running it like a covert operation, which is kind of dumb at this point. I mean, have
Yeah.
something, have something in your public affairs hip pockets, something you can say. I mean, it's whatever. I don't know. I listened to I don't know if you've ever heard of her. Her name's Sarah Adams. She was a CIA targeter. She was in
Yeah.
Benghazi, all this stuff.
I
I
did after
listen.
you mentioned her name. Yeah.
Did you listen to that podcast with her and Sean Ryan?
No, I read some of her 'cause she's on X, so I think I'd gone through and read some of her X posts.
My question is, she has a lot. Well, she claims to have a lot of intelligence. And my question is, where are you getting this? Where's she getting it? Because I mean, to have the types of contacts and the claims that she's making, I I thought about it a lot. I was like, man, where's she getting this? How did she develop a network like this? How much must that cost? It's a lot of money because a lot of times you pay for information. And I think that, but she was making some claims about, Al Qaeda resurgence, Hamza, bin Laden, is the new big dog. And his whole philosophy is an Islamic army, everybody's working together kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of scary. Their big thing is focusing on an attack on the homeland. And she's just like, it's any day now. It's any day now. And then these drones are happening. It's like, what's going on? But then I started thinking, it's like, well, this lady's also running a business, so she's making some analysis, worst case scenario. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Nothing happens. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. She can spin that and say, well, I contacted the FBI and this and that. She can insert herself, she and her company can insert herself into any sort of operation, counterterrorism operation that goes on because she's very, very big on, I'm sharing this with the government. I'm sharing this with the government, and I
Of
thought
course.
about it a lot. And I'm like, she goes, in the FBI, they don't answer my calls or they're not interested. So she can play that too. So if something does happen, she can say, I tried to tell him. But if something doesn't and there's some kind of plot that was thwarted, she can claim, well, I provided them with some information as well. It's kind of
Absolutely.
a, I really don't think there's no way she has the contacts she says. I don't say there's no way. I just don't see how that's possible.
It's probably 50-50, dude. You should
50,
make,
it probably is 50-50.
50, she's got some buddies that work in government like we do, and you hear some stuff, and then there's some deductive reasoning, right, that comes out of some of this stuff. And then you probably got another 50% that's just like, hey, man, it's just kind of like BS. Like these are my opinions. It's my educated guess. And, I mean, with claiming another terrorist attack on U.S. soil, I mean, that's a winning lottery ticket, right? I mean, that's going to happen. Like you said, okay, it doesn't happen this month, but now it happens next year. I told you so. I told you so. I've been saying it. And if it doesn't happen, well, it will happen again. But if it doesn't happen in the immediate future, it's like, well, we work hand in hand with the FBI and we've been getting the word out there. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a no lose prediction for. Plus, she's a chick, so there's probably a lot of human capital that's being spent
Yeah.
with some. I mean, that's what it takes, right?
But she's saying that she's infiltrated. Well, she doesn't say this, but to get the type of information that she is claiming, she would have had to infiltrate pretty deep into like no shit terrorist organizations. Like, how are you doing
Or
this?
was infiltrated pretty deep. Sorry,
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
a joke. Well, I mean, because here's the other thing too. You got to be careful of the info you release as well, because if you're the source providing that type of information and only a handful of you know it, like I'm not sure I want her going on a podcast or X and posting this stuff, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
pretty easy to draw that direct line back. So you got to be specific enough, but you got to be vague enough that it doesn't come back to single source.
yeah. That's why I'm thinking more and more she's just full of crap. She's just doing some analysis and deductive reasoning and saying that she has this source or that. And it's like, I could say, well, I talked to Josh and Josh said he heard this, 2 years ago about this dollar amount. And I'm going to use that. Not, I'm not going to say his name, protect my source, everything. Well, I've got sources who are deep inside this X community or whatever, XYZ community. And so I think she's full of crap. I might give it another listen just to look at it from the perspective of, okay, she's full of crap. Let's dissect what she's saying.
So I know we're going into our last little segment here. So I want to bring up the college football playoffs. So I'll throw that out there. We've got what? Is there 12 seeds? So we got 12 seats. So what's your overall take? The teams that are in it, do they deserve to be there? I know I'm just kind of throwing this out there, so I'm gonna give you a second to gurgle it. I can list some of the teams up there, but are you happy with the 12 team playoff? Should it expand farther than that? Should they take it down from 12? What's your overall thought?
I think it should go up from 12, first of all. Uh, I think it should go up from 12. And I think that, okay, let me back up. First of all, the transfer portal should not open until bowl season is complete.
Absolutely.
Um, period. I think I think Arkansas, the team we're playing, they're losing 11 people. 11 starters are
Team that's
probably,
playing Army lost 35. They had to drop out.
I think that they'll fix that, and I think they'll fix that in short order because there is a lot of money. When these stands aren't being filled and nobody's tuning in because they know it's going to be a crappy game. It's not reflective of anything. They're going to have to fix that, but definitely it needs to be more than 12 teams. I think the next step is to do 16 and have conference winners. No matter the Power Five conferences, whoever wins those are in it automatically. That's an automatic seed. And maybe that automatic seed gets the bye. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. And I'd really have to think about it. But in reality, I think the only real way to do it is to have a 32 team playoff. I mean, that way, somebody like Memphis, they put on quite a show against an unranked West Virginia. They were ranked 25, but there's probably 7 teams that are outside of this top 25 that could give Memphis a run for their money. So 32 teams. Who doesn't deserve it? I'm going to say SMU is really standing out to me big time on who doesn't deserve
Yes.
it. I mean, it's like,
Based off strength of schedule.
yeah. Boise State, I don't know, man. I never watched them play this year. I really hope Arizona State gives Oregon a run for their money because I said this before Thanksgiving. I was like, Arizona State's looking good. They've been looking good for weeks. And I said before Thanksgiving, I was like, that's the strongest team in the Big 12 right now, by far. Even though Texas Tech did beat them, that's when they were not in there. That was like week 4 or week 3. Man, Arizona State's no joke. And I love that running back, man. Scatabo, that guy's awesome. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Tennessee, Ohio State, Clemson, University of Texas. I mean, what breaks my heart is University of Texas is probably going to beat Arizona State. I think Oregon's going to easily roll that bracket. And what's really going to be horrible, Roger, is that if it's UT and Georgia in the final playoff game and UT wins. And it's like that it's very unsatisfying in that case. It's very unsatisfying because Georgia beats them twice, and then on the third time they play UT, you couldn't even win 2 out of 3. UT, and in another case, what if Georgia and UT go and Georgia beats UT again? It's like I guess it could be said that there's no doubt Georgia is the best team and UT is the second, I guess, but I don't know. This playoff, I guess it could have happened like that even if there were 32 teams. But I mean, it looks right, except for SMU. Maybe. Do you think there's somebody that should be in there that isn't?
I think you could make an argument for Army. I think when my big issue with SMU. So one, I think with conference champions, you have to give them some type of multiplier, right? There's a multiplier for being a conference champion, and then you have to look at strength of schedule. Here's what's crazy. So you take. Well, let me run down the list and I'll talk about SMU. So don't let me forget. So number 1 overall, Oregon, Big Ten champ, seeded number 1, Georgia, second highest ranked SEC champ, number 2, Texas was an at-large pick, seeded number 5, Penn State at-large pick 6, Notre Dame at-large, seeded 7, Ohio State at-large, seeded 8, Tennessee at-large, seeded 9, Indiana at-large, seeded 10, Boise, third highest ranked conference champ, Mountain West, seeded number 3. SMU at large pick from ACC, seeded number 11. Alabama, first team out of the CFP. Arizona State, number 12, fourth highest ranked conference champ, Big 12, seeded number 4. Then it goes down to Miami, Ole Miss, Clemson. So Clemson gets in, right? They were ranked number 16, fifth highest ranked conference champ, ACC. they're seated number 12. So the team that they beat for the ACC championship, which arguably has a weaker strength of schedule, is seated one position higher than Clemson, the team they lost to in the championship. And then you take a team like Army, okay, even though they got their ass kicked by Navy, but this was after the picks are already done, that won their conference, one loss to a ranked team. I think it was Penn State, if I'm not mistaken. And they're snubbed. So I think you expand it. I definitely like giving the weight to your conference champs and then do it like the NFL, man. You got a couple wild cards. The problem is they got to get a lot of those SEC and Big Ten teams in there. I'm actually surprised at Alabama. If they could have snuck Alabama in there, they would have. But because, especially with the football market, what's pissed me off overall is that I do believe NIL and the transfer portal have ruined sports right now. They got to fix it. Like you're talking about with the transfer portal, they got to fix this stuff quick. And NIL is becoming ridiculous, especially when you look at college basketball. I mean, there are rumors that the guy, I forget his name, who just declared to BYU, there are rumors that his NIL was $7 million. So it's coming now to where it's no longer about the school, the competition, TV time. It's just that, hey, man, NIL's just going to pay. Now, I do believe it works itself out because, like we talked about earlier, there's a return on investment, right? So if I'm paying all this NIL money, like I expect to win. And what's going to happen is because 7 million is not going to be the biggest. It'll go to 9, it'll go to 10, it'll go to 12. And eventually you're going to get a $15 million NIL deal. And the guy's going to be a flop. Like when they go to the NBA and you're like, what the hell? So I think it corrects itself. I just think it takes several years. But I think when you look at the NIL plus the transfer portal in college, you've basically turned it into the NBA, NFL, because they're going to play a year and go to the highest bidder.
Yeah. It's even like almost worse because at least in the NBA, NFL, there are contracts in place, right?
Right.
So, I mean, but what about this? What if name, image, likeness was tied to the transfer portal? Now, that would be interesting where it's like you sign a name, image, likeness deal, you no longer qualify for the transfer portal, which may be the case. I mean, which may naturally be the case anyway. I don't know. But I wonder if that name, image, likeness deal is for 4 years. Is that a 4-year, $7 million thing?
I guess it depends. It depends, right? They can do a 1-year deal, they can do a 2-year deal, whatever, but it's going to take a couple busts because there's going to be some busts, right? I mean, you have very few like all-stars that come out that are truly worth that kind of money. And these boosters and these people that are paying this kind of money, it's like, hey man, like I want my return. I want championships.
I guess there's
right? It does me no good to bring in the number one player. This is why it's incredible that he went to BYU. Because BYU has no shot at winning a national championship. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm going to tell you that right now with him going there. I don't care. He's the number one player in America coming in next year. BYU will not win a championship over the course of the next 2 years, which is how long he's going to be at BYU. So when you look at a BYU booster or somebody who's funding the NIL program, like what's the motivation to pay that kind of money?
Something. I don't know. I think it does need to be changed. I do have a little bit of commie in me when it comes to name, image, likeness, a little bit, because it's like, especially with football, well, any sport really, it's like, man, it just seems like the offensive lineman, should get a taste of that at least, or something. I don't know, but yeah, the name, image, likeness, we've talked about the downsides. That's where my commie goes away. And it's like, man, these kids are generating a lot of money. They're due something. And all this talk about, well, yeah, but they're getting a college education. It's like, that's pretty much worthless these days. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, when the college NCAA is making billions, this is what pissed me off. So the NCAA president was on the Hill yesterday. I watched some of it. And we're getting down to the end, so I'm not going to cover all the Title IX stuff or whatever, but
Title IX is communist.
And the NCAA is saying that Title IX doesn't apply to them. They're in court. They're in court right now that because they take very little federal money, where they're actually claiming they take $0 federal dollars, that Title IX does not apply to them.
Oh,
now applies to the schools, right? applies to schools. But here's my thing. The other argument was they're against prop betting, betting on players in college. And so here's what pisses me off. Oh, so NCAA, it's fine for you to make billions of dollars off of the individual players in college, but I can't do it as a fan. It's not good enough for me to bet and make some money or lose some money, whatever. But you can go sign a deal with EA Sports and make billions of dollars off this stuff, off of that individual. Dude, to me, and his answers on the women's and men's and trannies and sports, like the NCAA needs to go away. I wish the power conferences would grab their balls and actually be like because this is what Carolina did when they had their whole academic scandal. They're like, actually, NCAA, this is not in your jurisdiction. Like, we don't need you for that. And I wish that the power get together and say, you know what? We don't need you, NCAA. As a conference, we will control our teams, with those representatives, and we will sign our media deals and we will sign our NEAL deals. Like, NCAA is supposed to be a governing body, but produces zero product. They own nothing. They own nothing. I mean, I'm ready for the NCAA to go away. So that's my.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that at all. But I'll throw this one back to you. Then you could close out if you want. But what about Bill Belichick going to North Carolina football?
Man,
I mean,
I love
that's going to do something for recruiting. That's going to do something for recruiting.
You already have players that were in the portal. They're like, no, I'm going to stay here. And a little history. I hate Bill Belichick because I'm a Steelers fan. I hate the Patriots with a passion. I love my UNC programs, but I've always argued, and I think I've even said it on this podcast a couple of times, like, we need to pay the money, man. Pay the money, go out and get a big time coach and make it because we are great in every other sport. Like, we just won, even though Luke doesn't care. I do care about women's sports. We just won the NCAA women's championship, right? So check this out. Of the 43 years that the NCAA women's soccer tournament has been around, Carolina's won 22 of them. Okay, all the other schools combined have won 21. And then when you add the year before the NCAA came about, they've won 23. But I'm a big fan. So anyway, we couldn't get the football program right. So go out and get the big time player or the big time coach. Spend the money. What I like about what he said was, and this is the day and age, and you've got all these naysayers. He's never coached college. He doesn't know what. Like, dude, he came in there, and all the reports when he met with, I think it was Billy Cunningham, or our athletic director, is, I want to turn this into a portal to the NFL. I need more money. I need nil, but not just that. He's like, we need the best fields. I need the best training facilities. I need the best coaches. We need to turn this into a top 5 program in the country. And we need to start mimicking and mirroring the NFL. So when these kids transfer and they go forward, they're already there, right? So I like that it wasn't just about him. It really does focus on the kid, but it focuses on the university. Hey, we need to have the best. We need to have the best training facilities out there. We need to have the best medicine. We need to have the best sports nutrition. Like, I loved all that. And I think that you have already seen a couple people pull out of the transfer portal. And there are already a couple of high-end recruits that are like, you know what? I forget that I don't track the high school recruits as in football as I do college basketball, but you've already had a couple of top dudes turn down visits to other schools. Like, let me go to Carolina. Players that we would never get, right? Nobody would ever look at us, for football like that, but have already said, hey, let me go visit Bill Belichick and see what he's got going on at Carolina. Because if you're that kid that goes out there and it's like, hey, man, guy's got 6 Super Bowls as a head coach, 2 as an assistant, I think. And then you say, oh, by the way, also coach, arguably the greatest quarterback that's ever played in the NFL. Like, that's a pretty big selling point, man, to any student looking to go pro. So from my point of view, dude, I love it. I don't know. You see it any different?
No, man. I think it's good for your program for sure. I don't see any downsides.
So we'll see what Texas Tech does this year, right?
Nah, they won't do much. They won't do much, dude. Pop Isaacs, you know what? He got what he deserved. Transferred out, dude, got hurt. Hey, it's on you, bro. It's on you. I haven't actually been following basketball. I need to get on that. I usually don't start really jumping into the basketball until, like, really tracking who's doing what until the uh, bowl season is over. So I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to losing some money on NCAA basketball.
It's tough, man. It's tough to bet on.
It is. Yep. No doubt, dude. Well, maybe next time Josh will be in on this one. He's got like 20 birthdays lined up right in a row this week. Poor guy.
I think today's his kid's birthday or whatever. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
His wife's.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that's all good stuff. Now, I think hopefully we can get back to a regular schedule, but it's tough. I mean, we've talked to the guys before. It's like we all have day jobs. Some of us have transitioned a little bit. And so there's some traveling involved. So we're going to try to get at least where two of us can get out there. But hopefully next time before the holidays or maybe right after Christmas or whatever.
Oh,
so I'll go ahead and close it. Oh,
okay. I just saw you said I'm good. Close out. My bad, but I'm not going to close out. Kick it back to you. But thanks for everybody being patient. There are a few people approached me. We went to a Christmas party, all of us. A couple weeks ago, and people were coming up. Hey, when's the next one coming out? I was like, bro, I didn't even know you listened, man. I'm sorry, So appreciate all y'all listening. And yeah, I saw a big game for the first time in years the other day, last week, actually. It was really good to catch up with him. Same guy he always was, man. It's good that some things don't change, That's a good thing. But yeah, so thanks everybody for listening. I'll kick it back to Roger.
Now, I will close this out with a very big Merry Christmas. Not Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas. You got people on X all the time. Government shouldn't be endorsing anybody. Well, you know what? Okay, I get it. So if you don't like to celebrate that, then I expect you to work on December 25th. But this guy right here is not working on December 25th because I'm going to enjoy my Christmas holidays. So all our listeners out there, thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll close it out with have a very Merry Christmas.